Good morning and welcome to Devotionables, brief devotions for busy people. My name is Walker, and today we're going to be looking at Joshua chapter 23 and 24 as we complete our Bible reading of the book of Joshua. Joshua is one of the greatest leaders in the Old Testament, and he is at this point 110 years old and is ready to die. Joshua 23 verse 14 says, I am now going the way of the whole earth, and you know that with all your heart and all your soul that none of the good promises the Lord your God made to you has failed. Everything was fulfilled for you. Not one promise has failed. I wanted to take a brief look back at Joshua's life. And the first thing that I want to point out about Joshua is that he was a great military leader. As the children of Israel were going through the wilderness, he was Moses' general and led Israel into battle against the Amalekites. He led the children of Israel into the promised land. And he directed the Israelite conquest of the land of Canaan and drove out all the nations that were there in chapters 6 through 12 of Joshua. Joshua, besides being a great military leader, he was also a great political leader. He led with his words and also by example. He was divinely chosen by God to succeed Moses. He had been one of the 12 spies that went into the land of Canaan, came back with a positive report along with Caleb that they should go in and take the land of Canaan at that point. And because they did not go in and follow God's leadership, he and Caleb were the only two men of adult age who went into the promised land because the children of Israel had been unfaithful. He kept the stiff-necked Israelites focused on their God and their promised inheritance as he directed the distribution of the land in chapters 13 through 21 in Joshua. And besides being a great military leader and political leader, Joshua was also a great spiritual leader. Joshua was Moses' attendant outside the tent of meeting as God and Moses spoke with each other. Can you imagine the conversations that Joshua overheard? Also, besides Moses, Joshua is the only person that was allowed on the mountain of God, as God gave Moses the law and the 10 Commandments. Joshua kept the stiff-necked Israelites focused on their God. He was a spiritual leader in that way. God spoke directly to Joshua, and he was the spokesman of God for the Israelites. In Joshua chapter 24, verse 31, we see one of the great epitaphs of the Bible. And it says there about Joshua and his leadership, Israel worshiped the Lord throughout Joshua's lifetime and during the lifetimes of the elders who outlived Joshua and who had experienced all the works the Lord had done for Israel. We all should have a desire to have a legacy like Joshua had. And then finally, Joshua led a covenant renewals of the Israelites with God in chapters 8 and 24. I want to focus briefly on chapter 24. And what we see there is a call Joshua makes to the children of Israel, and then a response by the children of Israel. In chapter 24, verses 14 and 15, Joshua calls Israel to fear and worship the Lord. He tells them that they must get rid of the gods they worship beyond the Euphrates River and in Egypt. And he personally challenges them, choose you this day whom you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. The response of the Israelites is then, we will certainly not abandon the Lord to worship other gods. They recounted how God had led them out of slavery in Egypt and how God had driven out all the people of the promised land that he had given them. They said, we will worship the Lord because he is our God. Another call from Joshua. He tells them that they won't be able to worship God because God is a holy and jealous God who will not forgive them when they abandon the Lord and worship foreign gods. But Israel responds, "No, we will worship the Lord." Call again from Joshua. He warns them, "You are witnesses against yourselves as you have chosen to worship the Lord. In the book of the law that God spoke to Moses, 2 or more witnesses were required to convict a person of an offense." Well, the children of Israel, as we know later in the Bible, were not able to fulfill this. And so they became witnesses against themselves when they responded to Moses. They said, "We are witnesses." Basically, the entire nation gave witness to their commitment to worship the Lord their God alone. Joshua again calls and he says, "God, get rid of the foreign gods among you and turn your hearts to the Lord." God knew the desires of their hearts, and He still knows the desire of our hearts today. The Israelites' response, that they would worship and obey the Lord. Because Joshua, son of Nun, is one of the greatest leaders in the Bible, we may be tempted to focus on Joshua. I've spent a lot of this devotional focusing on Joshua. Well, he was a great leader. And we need great leaders like Joshua today as well. But the book of Joshua wasn't about Joshua. The book of Joshua tells us about the Lord God who goes before His people, driving the wicked nations out of the land of Canaan, out of the promised land. It tells us that God who fulfilled His covenant with the nation Israel to provide them with the promised land, a land flowing with milk and honey. The book of Joshua is God's story of how He loves His chosen people, provides for their needs, and desires for them to worship Him, be obedient to His word, and love Him with all their hearts and souls. Today, will you serve the unchanging God? He still desires our worship, our obedience, and seeks our heart's greatest desire. Go and love the Lord today, church.